Welcome everyone to the 23rd episode in this DevVenture, making a space shooter game from an idea that I was working on in my undergraduate years at UCT, at university. So let's see. I was trying to make a level manager script. Yes, a level manager script that takes in a level config resource, right? And what we wanted to do was use signals instead of these functions like setup waypoints and spawn enemy ship. So the next step we wanted to do, or the next step that I wanted to do, was to go into the enemy ship controller and establish functions. Excuse me. I wanted to establish functions in this script that we could connect to these signals, right? So let's do that. We go down to the bottom and establish those functions. So the first one is on waypoint IDSI. Fine, we'll keep that. So there. Okay. Function underscore on waypoint where's this thing, level manager, on waypoint setup, on setup waypoint. Right, and what does setup waypoint take in? This thing. Setup waypoint takes in number of waypoints. Okay, so we have a variable called num waypoints, which is of type integer, and in here we'll then create a for loop, right? So the for loop should be to call update waypoints with the old size and the new size. So I take the old size, which is waypoints, well, we'll say variable new size is assigned. So what is this? Column is 46. Okay, so let's do that. We'll go column 46 and we'll say waypoints dot size plus num waypoints, right? Because now we have, let's say the number of waypoints we currently had were 10 and the new number we pass in is 5, then we want a total size of 15, right? So it would be 10 plus 5 would be 15. We assign that to new size, and now we have our old size, which is just waypoints.size, right? Because we haven't modified waypoints.size. We haven't said waypoints.resize yet. That's where we do this, somewhere here. I guess not. We do it somewhere else. It doesn't matter. It's fine. We don't need to go into that. Let's try and save time. So we call update waypoints with the old size, which is just waypoints.size, and the new size, which is just new size. Okay, so on setup waypoint, because it's potentially multiple waypoints, right? Then, yeah, setup waypoints and set up enemy ships. So in the same way, we can create a function in enemy ship controller down here for on setup enemy ships, right? And it will be exactly the same thing except for enemy ships. So it will be function on setup enemy ships, takes in a number of enemy ships, num enemy ships, and that's of type int. And then down here we just say variable new size is assigned waypoint or enemy ships dot size plus the number of enemy ships. And this column is 66, we'll make that 67 so it's nice and lined up. 66 and 66, good. And then we call update enemy ships with the new size and the old size. So to be waypoints, so not waypoints, enemy ships dot size and new size. Okay. Now we just need to connect these in the level manager. So here in the ready function, if level config is correct and not null, then what we need to do now is say enemy ship controller no, it was enemy ship controller dot underscore. Actually, no, it was the signal. So it's a setup waypoints dot connect to enemy ship controller dot on setup enemy on setup waypoints. Okay, so this is the waypoint connection. We connecting our signal, which is this one, signal setup waypoints dot connect to enemy ship controller dot on setup waypoints. It's just connected. We're not calling it, we're not emitting a signal, we're just calling it. Okay, and now we want to do the same thing for setup enemy ships. So we'll say setup enemy ships dot connect to enemy ship controller dot on setup enemy ships. Okay, same thing. And just trying to line things up and then save the file. So that's actually really interesting that you can actually have empty spaces like this and it's not going to make a problem. You know, it's wonderful for me because that's a quality of life thing. I like to have things lined up neatly, just because it's much better for me to follow when they are lined up perfectly like that. You know, so like for example, here we have 29 and here we have 25. We could just make that a nice and even 30 for each of them. Right? And now it's all neat and tidy. You know, some of you might disagree with me on this and say, well, this is just unnecessarily pedantic. And in some cases, the operators are way too far to the left, I mean to the right. Like in this case over here, like that's a huge gap, right? And why is this so far away from the rest? That's 50. This should be 50 as well. I was about to say 52 as in T-double-O, but that's too ambiguous because now you think 52 as in 1 plus 1 when it should be as well instead, right? So let's change that. This one should be 50 as well. So as you can tell, I don't really care. I'm just going to keep doing my thing with the columns. Right, so now that's fine. And then this is column 35, and down here this is column 39. Well, that's annoying. We'll make this a nice and even 40. Make this a nice and even column 40, and then put all of these at column 40 as well, because really, what are we even doing? Then this should be at 50, so we'll bring these back down to 50. Cool. Column 40, 38. What? That's 50, that's 40, that is 41. Unavoidable, unfortunately, because it's just the closest I could make it to the left. And rather than adjusting this is parameters, right? So you can't, because this one, where you're going to line these up with this one, you can't, right? So just ignore that, it's fine. And then this should be 50, and it isn't, so we'll check that this is in fact in the right place at the right time. And the same for these, right? So that's 50, this should be for 49 because of the operator, right? So that the equal sign is at 50, and it is. And we do the same thing down here. Just make sure that all of these are on 50, right? So this one should be on par with this one, and this one. Excellent. And this should be on 50, which it isn't. So we'll just shift that along. Brilliant. Now I'm happy. All right. So we've got our functions set up. We've got our signals connected over here. Now all we need to do is emit those signals, right? So instead of calling setup waypoints, we just emit the signal. So now we say setup waypoints, or we say emit signal. Well, yeah, emit signal setup waypoints with the parameter, where is it now? Level config dot waypoints. Emit signal invalid argument for signal 1 argument should be a string name. Emit signal setup waypoints with the parameter level config dot waypoints. And then instead of spawning initial enemies, we do away with that and we emit the other signal. So we say emit signal, right? And we call setup enemy ships with the parameter level config, level config dot enemy ships. And then we line these up nicely. Excellent. And you know what we could actually do? We could just move this along like so. All right. So now we don't need these two because we've emitted the signals, right? So setup waypoints and spawn enemy ships is done. Then So for this one, we could actually, we need to do away with these. And then for spawn enemy ship, we print out spawning enemy ship. And then, excuse me, now we say emit signal again, except this time we call setup enemy ships with the number 1. We just spawn an additional ship, right? And then this win condition thing is going to be a little tricky, and I'll save that for an entire DevVenture, right? I'm going to keep that for a whole DevVenture on its own, because if you think about it, you're going to need different win conditions for different player modes. If you're playing as a miner, your win condition is going to be completely different to if you're playing as a defender, right? And if you're playing as a pirate, that's again a different winning condition. And similarly, losing conditions are also variable depending on the player mode. And a level complete, emit a signal or handle level completion. So these are placeholders for now, right? We just know that eventually we're going to have some kind of functionality to support these methods, functions, whatever you want to call them. On waypoint reached. Do we need to manage the waypoints reached in the level manager? Only if that is critical to the win condition. So we'll leave it for now. We'll make a comment above here. Not needed right now. This might be useful if there is a win condition requiring the player to reach a number of waypoints. Okay, so that's done. I just want to go through this and make sure everything is as expected, and that we haven't left anything out. All right, so we initialize the resource for the level config, right, and export that. So now we just have to populate this field for every level, and then we have variables like enemy ships spawned, enemy waypoints reached, and the player health. Do we need this variable? We have a whole enemy ship controller to manage the enemy ships. So I don't think we need this. Although, okay, so remember yesterday, or rather in the last live stream, if you're not watching this at the exact time this video is live, then not yesterday, but in the previous live stream, right? So let's just cater to asynchronicity. So in the previous live stream, we talked about the so-called Shreknik, right? Shreknik, the Shrek technique of building things according to layers. So you start with the core and you build on top of that layer by layer. So once a layer is stable and established and it's stable and it's ready to build on, then you start building the next layer. And each of these layers that you add on top of the core should make something that is on its own complete, arguably complete, right? So if for whatever reason I decide to halt all development once a layer is done, then good, right? That means the game should be able to be a game at that point, whether I decide to continue or not. That's the principle. And following that principle, that means that the core is still not done, right? Because it's not a game yet. It doesn't have, the win condition stuff yet. It doesn't have all of the features that I want to have in the basic mode, right? The basic version. And if you wanted to, you could separate the player modes. You could add on player modes as layers rather than put them all into the core, right? You don't have to have all 3 player modes in the core, but you need to have the foundations in place for different player modes in the core. So that's the whole idea. We want the core to have the infrastructure to support additional player modes. But at the end of the core, it doesn't necessarily have to have all 3 player modes. So I hope that distinction is clear. Let's continue. Okay, so enemy ships spawned. Not needed, but also not critical either way. We don't need to take it out, we don't need to keep it. Expected indent block after function declaration. Where is this? In enemy ship controller 217. I think this is done. Yes, it's done. Okay. In the level manager, let's carry on, right? So we've got the waypoints reached, we've got the player's health, and these are all this these are all set up in the initialize level, which we call in the ready function if level config is true, right? And that's fine. So we've got our signals, set up waypoints takes in a number of waypoints, and set up enemy ships takes in a number of enemy ships. Then in the ready function, we check if the resource is actually assigned, right? So remember, we are exporting this variable. And so if I were to show you that in scene, so testing seek behavior, for example, I can go here and attach level manager to the scene. And now you'll see there, level config, right? It's empty. So if I left it empty and I tried to run the scene, it's going to give me this error. The level manager has no level config assigned. And so now I need to actually go ahead and assign a level config. So the generic level config is the only one we have right now. So let's go ahead and add that. We'll just drag and drop it there, and then we can modify it, right? So the enemy ships is 1. The number of waypoints is 10. Is it 10 or 9? I think it's 9. And then testing seek behavior should have 9 waypoints, right? Waypoint 1 to waypoint 9. Okay. You know what? Let's make another resource. So we'll duplicate this one, and we'll call it level config seek testing seek behavior. Or testing excuse me, nav behaviors, right? Because this will eventually become the testing scene for multiple navigation behaviors, not just seek. And so now in this one, we can modify the value to be 9. And over here, we can keep that at 4 because that's the generic one. We don't want to modify that one unless we have to, right? And so now we can undo this and assign this one instead. It's got 1 enemy ship, it's got 9 waypoints, and the win condition is apparently destroy all. We don't care, that's not important right now. Okay, so now if I go back to the script for the level manager, we can go ahead and have a look here. So if level config is not null, which it isn't anymore, then call the initialize level function and then have these setup waypoints signals connected, right? And excuse me. And then if level config is not assigned, if it is in fact null, then push the error like I showed you before. And so now if we go into the initialize level function, you'll see that we establish the player's health as being the level config dot starting health, which is 100 in this case, and emit signal setup waypoints with level config's number of waypoints, which is 9, and the same thing for setup enemy ships with the number of enemy ships, which in this case is 1, right? And then we have a print message saying level initialized with level config. Okay, and here's a function for spawn enemy ship, which we might never actually use. I don't think we call it anywhere. We don't. But if we need to, we can just emit this same signal, set up enemy ships with 1, as opposed to level config.enemy ships, right? We just additionally spawn, we spawn an additional enemy ship with that exact same signal. And on enemy destroyed, so then we say enemy ship spawned minus equals 1. And I suppose we're going to need to have a function in the enemy ship controller that will manage when an enemy is destroyed. So we'll need to have a new signal. We'll have to add a signal here. So we'll just say with a comment to do add a signal to notify the enemy ship controller that an enemy has been destroyed. Right, so we can make this a triple comment. Oh, that's backticks, my mistake. And then we can carry on with the multi-line comment, right? So here, to do, add a signal to notify the enemy ship controller that an enemy has been destroyed. And this function will need to take in the ID of that enemy, so the enemy ship controller enemy ship controller knows so the enemy ship controller can react correctly. Okay, so now we've got this. I suppose we could tab them in. Yeah. So now we've got this notification here for a signal. Actually, we'll just put this at the top of the function to make it nice and clear that this function needs modifications, right? So we don't need this one yet. We don't need this one yet. On waypoint reached. We don't need this one yet. Again, not needed right now. You know what? Let's make this a multi-line comment as well. Just so that it's okay. Not needed right now. This might be useful if there is a win condition requiring the player to reach a number of waypoints. And then the same thing here. Excuse me. So check the win condition and the level is complete. Emit a signal or handle level completion. So ideally when the level is complete, you want to have some kind of win screen pop up, right? Or some kind of sequence that follows and shifts out to a new scene or does something. But for now, we don't need to worry too much about that. We can just keep going. So that's the logic. It's all there. It's all done for now. Like I said, we're not worried too much about these parts yet. We just want to make sure that the testing seek behavior scene works as it used to, right? Because we've made some fundamental changes and we want the behavior to remain intact regardless of our changes. And currently that's not true, so we need to fix it. Okay, now going back to enemy ship controller. I want to make sure that the enemy ship controller works as expected, right? So we've got this array for keeping track of the number of waypoints, and we've got this array of enemy ships for keeping track of the actual enemy ships in the scene. Drag and drop enemy ship nodes. So I just want to go back and make sure that this is of type waypoint. Here at the top, I made classes, right? So let's do that. Behavior waypoint is of type class name waypoint. Maybe I should name it something else. No? Yes? No? Type waypoint. Cannot assign a value of type array to variable. Oh yeah, it has to be array of type waypoint. Of type waypoint, like this. Value of type array node cannot be assigned. Okay. Okay, let's do this. We'll go here. Class name. We'll just say type underscore waypoint, right? And the same thing for enemy ship behavior. We'll say class name type enemy ship. This way we can specify exactly that this is of type enemy ship or of type waypoint. Value of type array node cannot be assigned to a variable of type array type waypoint. Okay, we'll just ignore this. Get nodes in group of type from the group waypoint. And I just want to make sure down here where we are actually creating enemy ships and waypoints that we are actually adding them to the group waypoint. Because if we aren't, then what are we even doing, right? So waypoint node ID, connect, emit signal, not adding it to group. We should do that. So waypoint node dot add to group, or is it add to group waypoint node? And then we can say waypoint node dot add to group. Right? So now we are adding this new waypoint to the group waypoints, right? Which is exactly what we want. We want it to be of type waypoint because now on top here, if we are calling all the waypoints, get nodes in group waypoint, if the new waypoints we created aren't in that group, we're not going to get them later. And that's, yeah, that's going to be annoying. So down here, we want to do the same thing. Waypoint node dot add to group just below the ID. Okay. Enemy ship node dot on enemy ship node ID assigned. On enemy ship node ID assigned takes in enemy ship ID. So we want to give it an iterator. Here we've got this value iterator, and so we'll just give it iterator. Okay. So just before this, we want to say enemy ship node dot add to group enemy ships. Add to group enemy ship. So ideally, we don't want to have to repeat these functions, right? There's this principle called the dry principle, DRY. And let me just write it out here. So DRY stands for don't repeat yourself. Okay, and basically that means if you've already got a function that has this for loop and it works well and it's, you know, We haven't tested it works well yet, but I mean, it works, or it should work, or it's the place that you want things to work. Then why should you establish the exact same thing somewhere else in your project? So up here, where we have these exact same for loops, why can't we just call update waypoints? And why can't we just call update enemy ships from the ready function? So let's do that. We've got this update enemy ships function. So up here, where we've got the enemy ships, why don't we just say update enemy ships with enemy ships.size, and the original size would be from 0, right? Old size equals 0. How do you specify? How do you specify default values in Video Engine? Okay, well, whatever. At this time, in the thing, we could just say enemy ships.size, right? For iterator in range enemy ships.size. So in this case, we want to go from 0 to enemy ships.size. So we'll say update waypoints over here. From 0 to waypoints.size. And then the same thing here. Enemy ships is assigned get tree dot get nodes in group enemy ship. All right. We actually want these to be in line with the rest out here and column 50. Then we create a line separation to make it nice and neat. And then we have another one, update enemy ships from 0 to enemy ships dot size. We line that up and we line that up. We can save it. You know what? We can actually do this. Now it's nice and neat. Hopefully this works. I'm not sure it will, but I'm hoping it does. This way we don't need these for loops anymore because we've got the functionality all the way down here. Update waypoints. What's the warning? On line 177, the parameter updated size is never used. Updated size. I see, so I should be using updated size here instead of waypoints.size. And the same thing here, right? Updated size should be here instead. Delta is never used. That's down here. And parameter waypoint ID is never used. Here, find enemy for waypoint. Enemy node is enemy ships. at enemy ship ID, and then if enemy node, then return the enemy node. This finds the enemy ship associated with a waypoint. It's a placeholder for multi-ship support. And that means we need to make additional logic in this function which is not there right now. Okay, that's fine. As long as we know what these warnings are talking about. Right? So now we go to the top. We'll just go through everything one more time, and then I think that will be all we have time for. Hopefully not, but I am a little bit worried that that is exactly what will happen. Okay, so we've got a waypoints array, an enemy ships array, a signal for the waypoint ID assigned, and a signal for the enemy ship ID assigned. And then in the ready function, we are printing out that the ready function has been called. And then we set up the waypoints by getting any nodes in the group of waypoint hang on. I think this was the whole point of making a level manager, right? So that we don't have to do this, because if we are using this enemy ship controller universally, right? It's saying waypoints get tree.get nodes in group of type waypoint. This is from the current scene, right? The scene tree. Then get the nodes in the group waypoint. But over here in the level manager, we are calling setup waypoints and connecting them to on setup waypoints. And in the enemy ship controller, down here on setup waypoints, should just say update waypoints, which it does. So this is a little bit of a leapfrog kind of situation where it's bouncing around from lily pad to lily pad. And I'm not actually sure what the order will be. And right now, I'm just concerned about whether it's actually going to work. So let's just run the scene and see what happens. And as expected, it's still not working. Invalid assignment of property key ID with value of type integer on a base object of type OmniLight 3D. Enemy ship node ID is assigned iterator. Why is it complaining about an OmniLight? These are OmniLights, by the way. OmniLight 3D. But why is it complaining about OmniLights in the enemy ship behavior? Invalid assignment of property or key ID with value of type int in a base object of type OmniLight. This is so strange. Where is this even happening? In update enemy ships of the enemy ship controller. Enemy ship controller, update enemy ships. Here. Enemy ship node.id is iterator. And if I go to enemy ship controller, or rather enemy ship behavior, this should actually be renamed to behavior enemy ship. But if I go on top here, the ID is of type integer. So what is it complaining about? Why is it talking about an OmniLight? I'm going to copy this, and we're going to solve this with DeepSeek, because I only have a few minutes left, and I don't want to waste them just taking up time trying to figure out exactly what is going wrong with this stuff. So I have the following error. Error message at runtime, causing the game to crash. That's the error message. Here are the script files you might find relevant. Enemy ship behavior.gd, and then we copy from enemy ship behavior.gd all of its code. We paste it in here, and then here we have enemy ship controller.gd, and then we copy all the code from there. Enemy ship controller, okay, and then we have level config.gd. Yeah, level config, all level config.gd is of type resource, but we need to give it anyway because it's still relevant. We copy all of this, paste it there, and then level manager.gd we paste all of this in here. We copy all of this code, and then we put it down here. And then I think we need to have waypoint behavior as well, right? So behavior underscore waypoint.gd, just in case it needs that logic too. Behavior waypoint, copy all of that, then paste it in there. Please help me figure out why it's talking about an OmniLight 3D. I don't see why an OmniLight 3D node is even relevant in this situation. Okay, let's see what DeepSeek has to say about this, right? So the error suggests that somewhere in your code, you are trying to set an ID property on an OmniLight 3D node. But OmniLight 3D node doesn't have an ID property. Yes, I'm not trying to do anything with an OmniLight 3D. So looking at your code, the most likely culprit is in enemy ship controller.gd in the update waypoints function. So function update waypoints takes in an old size of type int, an updated size of type int, and then it loops in range of old size up to but not including updated size. Then create a new waypoint node for waypoints at position iterator, and then if that is not null, then print setting it up and assigning ID to iterator. This line is problematic. Waypoint node dot ID is assigned the value iterator. So one of the nodes in your waypoints array is actually an OmniLight node, not a type waypoint node. Okay. Well, clicked on the wrong tab. Where is this now? Yeah. Okay, we were here. And then I go back here. I go to testing seek behavior and I check in the inspector. So it's actually talking about the enemy ship, not the waypoints. So something in the enemy ships array is apparently of type OmniLight 3D and not type enemy ship. And I need to understand why. Why is it of type OmniLight? Pirate enemy, the root node is type enemy ship. So what is it even doing with an OmniLight? Anyway, let's go back to this and see what it's talking about. When you want to try to set waypoint node.id to an iterator value, it fails because OmniLight 3D doesn't have an ID property. To debug this, check what's actually in your waypoints array. So inside the update waypoints function, you want to print waypoint node type and then get class. So if waypoint node and waypoint node is type waypoint, now that's nice. This is a nice little check. Let's do this instead. Okay. So I'm going to copy this and go into this. And where was this? In the update waypoints, right? Yeah, well, update waypoints. Update waypoints. Here we go. We'll just paste this down here like so, and then save it. We clear all of this stuff, and then we repeat this here. So if enemy ship node and enemy ship node is type enemy ship, then do these things, right? Then we say print waypoint iterator found and setting up. Enemy ship iterator found setting up. Okay, now let's try running this again. Aha! Amazing. At least it's running. And that's a wonderful place to end on, right? So I notice we have reached exactly an hour. Oh, this is wonderful. I'm so happy. We finally got it not crashing on startup, right? So that's wonderful. And I'm going to close things off here and continue with this in our next live stream, which will be on Monday. But for those of you who aren't watching live, it will be the next live stream, right? If you are watching with asynchronicity. So thank you once again to our junior DevVenture cubes. Your support means very much to me, and I appreciate it. And to the rest of you, thank you for your continued time and attention, for following these DevVentures. Please do share this with others and spread the, extend the audience as much as you can within your abilities. And then also, please do give this video a like. Liking the videos might seem like nothing, but it signals to YouTube that people are actually enjoying my content. And then YouTube will extend the impressions, so my video will appear in other people's feeds and they will find it by, so-called chance. So please do like and share. And if you haven't, then do subscribe and enable notifications so that you can be notified when I'm starting a new live stream, or if I'm doing a video that isn't a live stream, you'll be notified about that when it's released as well, right? If I'm leaving anything out, Discord, right? Join the Discord community. The link is in the description of all of my live streams, and it's open to anyone. You can join. The rules are on the Discord server. You'll be able to see them and follow them. And I hope to see you there. And if not,